certain foods can stop fat cells from expanding. Other foods cause bad fat cells to become good fat cells. Still, other foods can even redirect a fat stem cell so it can't create more dangerous fat. Some foods even crank up your brown fat space heater. And I could go on, but essentially, I'm not sure that is common knowledge, that actually the foods you can eat, specific foods, can actually go in and target fat. So we're all waiting. What are some of these foods that we can start bringing into our diet to do all these magical things?
All right. I want to tell you a little background story of how I got into this area of research to begin with. I wrote about foods in my first book that activate your health defenses, your circulation, angiogenesis, stem cells, your microbiome, your DNA defenses, as well as your immune system that also lowers inflammation. And one of the things, and I wrote actually about 300 plus foods in that book, and I really loved them. The book became very popular, and as it became more and more popular, one of the things in the back of my mind that I was a little afraid to hear, actually, I was worried about, is whether or not people would be writing me to say, Dr. Lee, you wrote about so many tasty foods. I'm eating so much that I'm actually starting to become, I'm gaining too much weight and I'm becoming obese. Like that, as a physician, as you described as well, I'm on the same page as you. Like I have a responsibility to actually make sure that people use foods and respect foods in a way that is within a normal physiological balance. And so I was a little afraid of this. But you know what happened? I would get emails from people who were thanking me for feeling better, more energy, coming off medications, just being more empowered in general. But then I started to receive the first signs that, in fact, that quite the opposite of what I was hearing, I was afraid of, was coming true. People were saying, Dr. Lee, in addition to all these other good things that you write about, I'm starting to actually lose weight in a way that I haven't been able to lose before. First time, I sort of thought, somebody's just overly kind. But then I started to hear it over and over and over again. And I thought, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. I'm a scientist, so I'm really attuned when I observe something that doesn't fit with the obvious paradigm. What? Eating food causes you to lose weight? How could that be? Eating foods you enjoy, eating more foods you enjoy cause you to lose weight. That didn't compute for me. And so I had already been studying metabolism in my own research. And so I started to probe into this. Could it be that in many foods, there are bioactive, certain substances that actually target fat and cause the behavior of the fat in your body to do something completely different than you would have thought, which is just to get bigger and accumulate? Maybe there is some hidden mechanism within nature that is just hidden in plain sight that we need to know about. And that's really kind of the beating heart of this book, which is not only is there a new science of the metabolism, but in fact is within the realm of food as medicine. There's this new discovery that the bioactives that are present, that Mother Nature has laced into our foods, can activate the healthy fat to reshape itself, not grow so big, redirect itself so we're creating more beneficial fat than harmful fat, and literally get rid of visceral fat. And as I dove into this deeper and deeper, the discoveries were getting more and more exciting to me, because not only was the lab research there identifying what these compounds are. They could be the catechins in tea. They could be the ellagic acid in strawberries and in chestnuts. They could actually be the sulforaphanes in brassica, the broccoli and bok choy and gailan, or turmeric. Or it could actually, their clinical studies were also being done to show that eating these foods specifically could actually shrink your waistline, your waist circumference, making your body tube a little bit smaller because it is knocking down the visceral fat. Weight loss is sort of, overall weight loss is sort of a side effect, as you pointed out, to actually right-sizing your body in ways that eating foods can actually generate. And so what I did, I spent about 2 years cataloging these foods. I spent about 10 years doing metabolism research, but 2 years really cataloging these foods. And I finally write about them again as if I were taking the reader into my grocery cart and pushing them around and telling them what to actually put into the cart from section to section in the grocery store.
Yeah, it's really an incredible read. Now, a couple of things there. You've mentioned brown fat during this conversation about, brown fat being different from white fat, and we actually want brown fat, and it has a lot of properties that can help us lose weight, lose the excess fat on our bodies that many of us are trying to do. Now, a few months ago, I had Dr. Susanna Soberg on this podcast, and she's done a lot of research into cold immersion and what happens when you spend periods of time in cold water, in cold showers, in cold plunges, and what that does to brown fat. But immersing yourself in cold water to increase the amount of brown fat in your body is frankly something that a lot of people are not going to do, right? Nor do I think everyone should do cold water immersion. Having said that, I think it's going to be very, very individual who benefits from something like that. But you are beautifully making the case in your book that you don't need to actually do that. There are certain foods that will do that for you. So help us unpick that and help us understand what some of these foods might be and how they're able to do this.
Okay, this is where my background in biotechnology and looking at the mechanisms, like what is the domino effect of a trigger to a beneficial effect would be in understanding brown fat. It turns out that cold immersion, eating foods, and there's a few pharmaceuticals that have been tested can actually activate brown fat, and largely in the same way. So I just want to make one point to say brown fat was originally discovered in animals that are subjected to the cold. Hence, you may have talked about this before. It was discovered actually in hibernating animals plucked out of their burrow in the wintertime. It's the alpine marmot actually in Europe, where they discovered this little brown mass. And it really was the space heater. It actually created heat for the animal, and to fuel up that engine to create heat, it was drawing down on the fuel that it accumulated by stuffing its cheeks as it was preparing for hibernation. So this is an evolutionary process that has been conserved, meaning that it's actually passed on to humans. But for humans, we didn't really think that, because we were born in warm hospital rooms or in incubators, our homes have thermostats. We don't hibernate. We're not born in caves anymore, cold caves. But it's a vestigial kind of thing. It turns out not to be. It turns out that brown fat is actually an incredibly important thing. But here's how it works. Cold temperature, and I'm sure you've talked about this, causes a shock to the body that releases epinephrine and norepinephrine, these hormones that actually are produced by our brains, and they course through our nerves, and they they trigger brown fat and really start the engine of the brown fat, literally like the clicker on your gas range on your oven before you boil some water, whoosh. All right. And so cold will actually do that. It turns out that one of the receptors is called the beta-3 adrenergic receptor. Beta-3 adrenergic receptor is a receptor for adrenaline, which is a shock hormone, a stress hormone, a fight or flight hormone. So brown fat actually lights up when you actually have a shock to your system, like a cold plunge. For those who want to do it, go for it, because that's actually how it works. It turns out that there's a bladder spasm medicine called mirabegron, because that also does the same thing, because the beta adrenergic receptor can actually be found on your bladder, all over your bladder as well. And in the bladder, it does something different than your brown fat. It actually helps your bladder contract, which you need to contract your bladder to pee. All right. But some people have a spasmodic bladder. It's contracting all the time. You get leakage and all this other unpleasant stuff. And so there have been medicines that have been discovered to actually hit the beta adrenergic receptor in your bladder to calm the bladder down. It hits the beta adrenergic receptor. Interestingly, researchers at the U.S. National Institutes of Health have studied that bladder medicine to see if they can target brown fat. And when they do, it lights up the brown fat beautifully. And I show pictures of this. I've got permission from the researchers to show how this this mechanism can light up brown fat. Now, I don't recommend anybody to use medicines to light up their brown fat because the doses of the medicines that were tested were way higher than you would normally use for bladder spasms. So don't do that. But that's a setup to say, well, what else can light up brown fat with the beta adrenergic receptor? Well, it turns out it's not just the beta adrenergic receptor, but once you click that, once you tip that switch, after that, the next dot that gets checked in this cascade is something called uncoupling protein 1, UCP1. And that trigger lives on the mitochondria, which is a little organ in your cells, especially in your brown fat, that is packed. Our brown fat is packed with mitochondria, these little sub-organs in our cells. The mitochondria is the fuel cell. I remember when I was in medical school and I had to memorize everything. I thought of it as mitochondria because it's small but mighty. It actually burns fuel, creates a lot of energy. It actually creates ATP, burns ATP to create energy. Well, it turns out mitochondria have a lot of iron in it naturally. Iron, when it's oxidized, is naturally brown. Lots of mitochondria, lots of iron, lots of oxidation. And guess what? That's why brown fat is brown. So for people wondering, why is brown fat brown? That's the reason. It's packed with this mitochondria that is actually a fuel cell. So anything that can activate the beta adrenergic receptor, anything that can actually turn on uncoupling protein 1, anything that can activate the mitochondria will turn on your space heater. And this is where foods actually come in, because beyond the cold, beyond the bladder spasm drugs, is a whole collection of foods: produce, dried, canned, jarred foods, seafoods, and beverages that can actually turn on one or more of these processes.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible because I wonder here on this, right? Some of the foods there I know are, I think chili peppers and chili in general are one of these specific foods that target brown fats. Is that right? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, listen, I want to show you. So this is a chili pepper. It's a dried chili pepper. And, you might see this dried and sold in a grocery store. You might use it to cook different types of dishes, whether it's a East Asian dish or a South American dish or an Italian or Spanish dish. A lot of people like chili peppers. And by the way, here's another example of chili. This is what you put on your pizza, right? So chili flakes. Yeah. So chilies come in a lot of different forms that we actually cook with. It turns out that inside chili pepper is something called capsaicin. Capsaicin, it gives us the burn, that zing, the fire in our mouth. And the reason it does it is because we have receptors in our tongue, taste receptors for capsaicin. They're called capsaicin receptors. So in addition to sweet, sour, salty, we can activate, we can feel the zing. The receptor, just for people who are interested, because I know some people who watch your podcast are, really into the details. It's called the TRPV1 receptor, and capsaicins tackle turn on the TRPV1, and then it's on your tongue. You feel the burn, all right? And what happens is that receptor text messages your brain, and your brain releases two different kinds of hormones. One is endorphins. Endorphins make you feel good, which is why some people are in love with eating hot, spicy food. You've heard about that, right? I can't wait till I get some hot, spicy food. For those people, their reaction to this endorphin from spices caused by this receptor, for the capsaicin binding receptor, is one of pleasure. All right. Now, the other hormone that your brain releases is norepinephrine. Norepinephrine actually is released from your brain and it goes down your nerves. And this is what I tell you: next time you eat something really spicy, if you're inclined to do this, do it in a quiet room and close your eyes and just feel your body. You'll feel the burn. You'll literally feel your brain activating. You'll feel it. I kid you not. And then you'll feel a rush of nerves being activated down your neck. Those nerves down your neck light up your brown fat, and it'll turn on your brown fat. So the norepinephrine from your brain from chili peppers actually turns on that hormone. It goes down your neck, activates a beta-3 adrenergic receptor in your brown fat. That turns on the UCP1, turns on the mitochondria, and starts the space heater function. You can actually feel that. And by the way, the noradrenaline that forms, that's also why people get sweaty and red and flushed when they're eating hot food as well. So this is just another dimension of how foods that we eat can actually activate this. And so that's what one of the things that you alluded to earlier. I've been doing the research to figure out what exact substance in a food, what's in a caper, what's actually in green tea, what's in coffee, what's in a pear, that can, what's in a bean, that can actually light up our fat, not only our brown fat, but it can also change and shapeshift our white fat in order to be able to burn down and slim down the harmful fat so we can be more physiologically fit.
Hi there. If you enjoyed watching this video, I know you'll love the next one. Stay here and check it out, and I'll see you there.